Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, and this week we have joining us from Ireland, Paddy Corry. Hi Paddy, welcome to the show.
Hey Vasco, thank you very much. How are you doing?
So Paddy was a developer for many years, after which he started his Scrum Master journey with a special interest for coaching and developing the agile mindset. So Paddy, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Sure. I suppose like a lot of people, a little bit by accident, a little bit falling into the role, but my background isn't originally engineering. It's in I studied business in university, and my kind of major subject was production and operations management. And that kind of looks at a lot of topics around the area of lean, process, quality, all of those kind of areas. And when I graduated, I guess like many people, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I applied for a role as a trainee programmer, ended up being a developer in operations teams, then in software development teams. I started out learning COBOL. After a few years, I decided maybe didn't want to stay with COBOL, so learned Java, joined some Java development teams. And that's when I started getting exposed to Scrum and XP for the first time. And I guess a lot of the things I learned in college started to make a lot of sense when I started looking at Scrum and XP. And there was even mention of Kanban, which, came from the theory that I learned back in university. So that really appealed to me. I worked with Scrum and XP as a developer for a number of years. And really when a Scrum Master left the company, I was asked, do you want to give it a try? And yeah, one day I wasn't a Scrum Master, the next day I was. And
so that's really a story that I definitely find familiar, and many of our guests have also expressed similar stories of, as you say, falling into the role. And I don't know if you're going to tell us a story about the start of that journey, but what we would like to explore today, Paddy, is a story of a particularly difficult moment as a Scrum Master. On Mondays, we explore stories of failure because, of course, failure helps us learn. And given that you do have that lean background from your university degree, I'm quite interested to hear what story might be. So tell us that story and walk us through the steps, make us feel as if we were there walking with you through all of those steps of that story.
Sure. Well, I guess in my time learning how to be a developer, I think one thing that I was very, very interested in, and one thing that I was very, very comfortable with was the proximity to the work. I loved being kind of hands-on, making the work happen. And I think relatively early on in my Scrum Master career, I was having conversations with other members of the development team, still in my role as a developer. About, are we the ones actually doing the work, or are we the ones, talking about the work, and which role are we more comfortable in?
How did those conversations feel like as you look back and you maybe look at some phrases or approaches you took? Like what did it look like from the outside, that idea of the Scrum Master talking to the developers as if he was still a developer?
It was almost a mentoring conversation. They would have been impromptu mentoring conversations, I guess, between myself and another person who would have been a senior developer, asked to play the role, wondering what way the future was going to go. So we were kind of having impromptu conversations, maybe in the canteen over a coffee, maybe in a meeting room. And the question was always, how is it going for you? How is the Scrum Mastery impacting your development? Do you want to do more of one or less of another? And for me, I was always gravitating more towards the Scrum Mastery, I think, from the beginning. whereas other colleagues of mine would have been, trying to balance the Scrum Mastery, but also maintaining the development skills. So I think for me, it was always a question of how can I do more of this from very early on.
And as you started to have those conversations and slowly slipping into the Scrum Master shoes, as it were, what were the biggest changes, perhaps the contrasts that you saw between what you were expected to do before and what you were expected to do now that you were a Scrum Master?
I think that the challenge for me was the one I kind of alluded to, where I could no longer talk about the work from the perspective of having my hands on it. I wasn't the one building the thing. I was the one representing the people building the thing, if you like, and helping them, facilitating them. And I think that the kind of difficult choice of choosing between one role or the other was encapsulated in a pretty nice quote for me by my colleague, actually, one of my senior development colleagues. And he said he'd read it somewhere. I went and looked it up, and I think it originates from Lisa Atkins. I could be wrong, but it's that you can either make great things or you can make things great. So you can be the one who makes the things, or you can help make the environment right for the people who do. And that helped guide me a lot. So I became less concerned or less nervous about representing others. For example, protecting the team from, stakeholder requests for information, helping the team, develop self-defense mechanisms for those, that they can radiate information to avoid being interrupted. And each interaction as a Scrum Master is, I guess, an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to facilitate learning in a team as well.
Absolutely. For me, the biggest takeaway is that all of us as Scrum Masters, we need to get to a point where we need to have that inner conversation, right? The conversation about, okay, so am I the one, if we had a product owner background, am I the one writing the stories, or am I the one helping others write stories? Or if we were a developer or a tester or even a manager, right? We have to have that inner conversation and kind of tell ourselves, where does the line fall? And, everyone will have a different experience. Context also affects where the line might fall, but it really is about having that inner conversation and making a call, like what is and what isn't expected of me. That's my biggest takeaway of this story. Paddy, what would you like our listeners to take from this story?
I think for me, the thing I would like people to take away is that when you're in a team, everybody adds value in different ways. As a developer, we get very comfortable being the ones building, and that is definitely a very concrete way to add value. But others in the team and other stakeholders also add value in different ways, and that would be the key takeaway I'd encourage people to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Great takeaway. Thank you for that, Paddy.
No problem.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.